Virtual tours of museums, art galleries and historical sites. Joy of museums virtual tours. Take a virtual tour from your home. We explore the world's best museums, art galleries, and historic sites across the world. There are over 60,000 museums and historic sites around the world, and we aim to share virtual tours of the very best of these. Subscribed by my YouTube channel, Golden Words. The history of museums. The word museum has classical Greek origins. It meant seat of the muses, and was used to identify a philosophical institution or a place of contemplation. The Greek form was mousion, and it was translated into the Latin form, museum. Museum was used in Roman times to nominate places of philosophical discussion or a building devoted to learning or the arts. By the 1600s, the term museum was being used in Europe to describe collections of curiosities. The earliest use of the word museum in English was in reference to institutions such as libraries where objects were displayed, and the term started being recorded in writing during the 1680s. Today, a museum is a place where objects of historical, artistic, or scientific interest are exhibited, preserved, and studied. The modern museum can trace its origins to private collections established by wealthy individuals during the Renaissance. Prominent figures such as the Catholic popes in the Vatican accelerated the interest in antiquities and art masterpieces, and national leaders such as kings followed the practice. These collections were symbols of power and prestige. However, in time, a spirit of inquiry led to a different purpose and broader participation, not necessarily limited to religious or national rulers and leaders. These new collectors were mainly focused on the study and advancement of knowledge. Essential to that focus was the education of the public. Institutes were established with this aim as their public mission. As the prestige of these institutions increased, private collections found their way into public or corporate institutions, which provided greater security and accessibility. The first institution to be granted a significant private collection was the University of Oxford. The conditions of the gift included that a suitable place is built to receive it. The Ashmolean Museum opened in 1683, based on Elias Ashmole's private collection. The Ashmolean Museum later relocated to another building near the University of Oxford. The original 1683 building is now occupied by the Museum of the History of Science at the University of Oxford. Soon after, the British Museum was established in 1759 as a public institution, followed by the Louvre in 1793. Today, the purpose of museums vary from institution to institution. Some focus on education and academic study, others on conservation, and others on commercial endeavors. Ancient artifacts. Artifacts are objects shaped by humans that are of archaeological, historical, or cultural interest. Examples include tools, pottery, metal objects, weapons, and items of personal adornments, such as jewelry or death masks. These artifacts shed light on the lives of our ancestors and our heritage. Mythological art. Mythology in art started in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt and was established as a popular art form by the Greeks in their sculptures. Mythological paintings emerged in popularity during the Renaissance when the great Renaissance masters added the humanist dimension to Greek and Roman mythology. Famous history paintings. History paintings are defined by their subject matter and usually depict a moment in a narrative story. Before the 19th century, the most common subjects for history paintings included religious, mythological, and allegorical themes, representing the broadest view of history painting. Famous sculptures. The earliest Greek word for a statue meant delight, and since the beginning of time, sculptors have tried to create forms that inspire delight. Christian art and biblical paintings. Christian art uses themes and imagery from Christianity. Most Christian groups have used art to some extent, although some have had objections to religious images. There have also been many periods of iconoclasm in which icons and other images or monuments were deliberately destroyed. Buddhist art. Buddhist art is the artistic practices that are influenced by Buddhism. Buddhist art originated on the Indian subcontinent following the historical life of Siddhartha Gautama, 6th to 5th century BCE. Ancient Egyptian art and artifacts. Our tour of ancient Egyptian art includes any sculpture, architecture, paintings, ceramics, drawings on papyrus, faience, jewelry, ivories, burial artifacts, or objects produced by the civilization of ancient Egypt. National museums in the United States. National museums in the United States are museums that are authorized by Congress. Some of these national museums are operated and funded by the federal government. Some are designated as national museums but are privately operated and financed. Maritime museums and museum ships. Maritime museums specialize in the exhibition of objects relating to all types of ships and naval history. Natural history museums. A natural history museum is a scientific institution with natural history collections. The collections may include records of animals, plants, fungi, ecosystems, geology, paleontology, climatology, and more. A primary role of a natural history museum is to improve our understanding of the beauty and wonder of the natural world. Science and technology museums. A science museum is devoted to exploring and explaining science and increasingly emphasizing technology, and therefore, are also technology museums. Automotive museums. Automotive museums explore the history of automotive-related transportation and sport. These museums celebrate automotive industry milestones and sporting achievements and its famous people. The word automotive comes from the Greek autos, self, and Latin motivus, of motion, referring to any form of self-powered vehicle. This term first came into use regarding automobiles in 1898. Famous artists, you should know. An artist is a person engaged in an activity related to creating art, practicing the arts, or demonstrating an art. The word art derives from the Latin ars, which means skill method, but also conveys a connotation of beauty. Famous women in the arts. Women artists have been making art throughout history. Unfortunately, their work has often been overlooked and undervalued. Historical stereotypes about the sexes have caused certain media, such as textile or craft arts, to be primarily associated with women and were demoted below the fine art. Military and War Museums. A military and war museum is an institution that cares for collections related to military history and in remembrance of sacrifices made during wars and conflicts. The types of museums vary from large institutions to smaller institutions focusing on specific subjects. Air and Space Museums. Air and space museums exhibit the history and artifacts of aviation and space exploration. In addition to aircraft and space vehicles, exhibits include photographs, maps, models, dioramas, clothing and equipment used by aviators and astronauts. Archaeological museums. An archaeological museum is an institution with collections that include artifacts shaped by humans that are of historical or cultural interest. Examples of artifacts include tools, pottery, metal objects, weapons, remains from historic sites and structures plus items of personal adornment such as jewelry or death masks.